The UFC heavyweight division has reached a critical point, and the eye poke at UFC 321 isn't even necessarily the biggest problem. Yes, of course, we have a heavyweight title picture that still needs to get sorted out, with Tom Aspinall and Ciryl Gane having to rematch, with Jailton Almeida losing despite having 10 minutes of control time, and Alexander Volkov being the #1 contender that is not going to have any sort of fight for the title anytime soon. And the most embarrassing fight at UFC 321 for the heavyweights wasn't even the eye poke. It was Hamdi Abdelwahab versus Chris Barnett, where Chris Barnett showed up, frankly, looking like what Walter Walker said, chocolate Peppa Pig. The winner of this fight, Hamdi Abdelwahab, was released by the UFC following a win. Now, of course, he did look bad. He had no finishing instincts. Apparently, he has no idea what jiu-jitsu is because he didn't go for a choke. He didn't try to finish the fight or anything. And frankly, they both looked terrible. This was truly a pathetic fight to consider that these guys are pro athletes being paid to do this. You had Chris Barnett's butt cheeks out during the fight, writhing in pain and screaming when he gets taken down, like he's in pain at a takedown. That's just how out of shape Chris Barnett is. The guy that won the fight, Hamdi Abdelwahab, is the one that got released from the UFC, whereas overweight and embarrassing Chris Barnett, who's 2-4 in the UFC now, did not get released. People just don't care about the heavyweight division, and even the fighters, the biggest name fighters, don't want to be heavyweight champ anymore, because we have Alex Pereira, the UFC light heavyweight champ, and Jon Jones, both not even really caring about the heavyweight belt at all. They just care about fighting each other at the White House. This right here was Alex Pereira reacting to the UFC 321 main event. He said, "Let's make the heavyweight division great again. Shama X Bones equals White House." Jon Jones obliged. She said, "Alex, I'd be down to bring the highest skill level to the White House. Appreciate the respect you showed. Let's dance." And of course, the respect you showed is a dig at Tom Aspinall. And we're reaching a very, very rough point in the heavyweight division where the actual championship itself that was contested for by Ciryl Gane and Tom Aspinall quite literally is not the prized possession anymore. It used to be that the UFC heavyweight title, and it's been like this forever in boxing as well, the heavyweight title was the most coveted belt in sport, the baddest man on the planet moniker, especially back in the day where the biggest stars held the heavyweight belt. You have Brock Lesnar, Randy Couture, Cain Velasquez, Daniel Cormier eventually held the belt. And of course, Jon Jones held it for a brief period of time, or not so brief, but he held the heavyweight belt. And now we're reaching a point where it's not even a coveted belt at all, to where the biggest stars in the sport would rather fight each other in a side quest fight for like an upper level or upper division BMF belt and not even fight for the actual heavyweight title. And just to show you how brutal a spot this division is in, we have to take a look at the rankings now at heavyweight compared to what it was in its star-studded days. Because, of course, the heavyweight rankings right now, we have Tom Aspinall as the champion, Ciryl Gane as the #1 contender, Volkov as #2, Sergey Pavlovich, Curtis Blades, Jailton Almeida. And, of course, Derek Lewis is in the mix there as a big star, but he's not a serious title threat. So after number 4 or 5, there's a massive, massive drop-off in the heavyweight division where Salsa Boy Waldo Cortez Acosta is ranked 6th. Ante D'Elia with 1 UFC fight is ranked 9th. He fights Salsa Boy this weekend, actually. And then you have Tabora, Gaziev, Mick Parkin, and Talison Teixeira ranked. And I don't even think I think Talison Teixeira's only UFC win is Justin Tafa. And he's ranked number 15 in the division. And then, of course, we have Walter Walker, who's somewhat exciting. But Tai Tuivasa hasn't competed in well over a year. He's lost multiple times in a row, been knocked out multiple times in a row. And this is just a disgusting, disgraceful state for the previously most prestigious division in the UFC to have. I mean, some of the biggest fights in UFC history took place in the heavyweight division. And we take a look back to the heavyweight rankings back in 2013, where you had Cain Velasquez as the champ, and you had Junior Dos Santos as the #1 contender. Then you have Daniel Cormier, Fabricio Verdum, Bigfoot Silva, Travis Brown, Josh Barnett, Alistair Overeem, Frank Mir, Stipe Miocic, and Big Country Roy Nelson at number 10. Those are all very star-studded for the time. And even honestly, these guys would beat a lot of the heavyweights now. Cain Velasquez would run through a lot of these heavyweights. Daniel Cormier, JDS, Verdum, Bigfoot Silva, Josh Barnett. Alistair Overeem, Frank Mir, and Stipe, this division literally 13 years ago was in a much, much better place than it is now. And I've talked about it on my channel, and I might even stand corrected here. The sport advances over time and people get better, especially in the lower weight classes. You have a lot more skill than you had 10 to 15 years ago on average. I mean, 135 to 170 or even 125 to 170 is nothing but great athletes. And here we had essentially NFL linebacker type of builds, NFL D linemen and linebackers that were fighting at heavyweight. And now we have just fat guys. If you look at it, Hamdi Abdel-Wahab has literal boobs bouncing around. Chris Barnett is disgustingly overweight and his pants are falling off and he doesn't know how to fight. I mean, the fact that this is a professional athlete that gets paid to do this and flown to the other side of the world to do this compared to what this division was 12, 13 years ago is frankly embarrassing. And I'm getting to the point where I'm even considering this post from Stand 'Em Up says, let the heavyweights juice again. You know, people like Alistair Overeem, Brock Lesnar. I mean, look at the state of this heavyweight title fight. Alistair Overeem versus Brock Lesnar looks like two Terminators. It looks like Optimus Prime versus Megatron for the UFC heavyweight title. And now, outside of Ciryl Gane and Tom Aspinall, who just fought for the belt, we have this. This is our heavyweight division. And the guy that won gets cut. I understand the UFC has tried to bring in some sort of talent when it comes to the heavyweight division. They signed Ante D'Elia, they signed Buchecha, they signed a few other guys. Mario Pinto's on his way up. He could be a star in the heavyweight division. But with what we're looking at in the heavy, I mean, like, look at right there. That's literal boobs on Hamdi Abdel-Wahab. And that is literally a different sport compared to this. And so what do we do with the heavyweight division? Do we let them juice? Do we tell them they got to lose weight? I'm not really sure, but something to keep in mind, each division goes through phases. I mean, the 155 division is the most star-studded weight class in the UFC right now and has been for several years. There was a point where they almost cut the division. The light heavyweight title didn't even get contested for like 3 or 4 years at one point. In the early 2000s, you know, Jens Pulver, I think maybe Sean Shirk was one of the champs in that division. I can't remember, but Jens Pulver, they didn't give a rat's ass about that division until BJ Penn came around and kind of saved it. And then, of course, there's also the talk about the fall of US MMA because the only United States born champion right now is Kayla Harrison, and the highest ranked fighters in the UFC that are born in the US aside from Kayla Harrison is Bilal Muhammad, who doesn't even rep the US. He reps Palestine. He's ranked number 1 at welterweight. And then Sean O'Malley, born in Montana, trains out of Arizona, is ranked number 2. And aside from that, of course, I know we have Josh Van, who reps the US, but he's not even from the US. He's from Myanmar or Burma or whatever the name of that country is. It's the same as the heavyweight division. It's the same as the fall of US MMA. We just go through phases. And so while the heavyweight division is in a disgusting, like truly disgusting state, I think that it's not time to panic just yet or allow them to juice. I'm sure plenty of guys are still juicing in the UFC anyway, but it's not quite time to panic because the lighter weight classes such as 145 and 155 were not as popular. And of course, the stardom of Conor McGregor inspired a lot of younger, smaller guys to get into the sport. And now look at the health of those weight classes from 135 to 170. I think that as we move into the Paramount deal in 2026, where there's more money in the sport and more eyes on the sport, you're going to start to see bigger athletes, you know, young athletes, you know, that are like middle school to high school aged, that are bigger athletes that might in the past have played football or basketball or baseball, be open to the idea of MMA as the sport becomes more popular in the mainstream and has more money pumped into it. Because that's really the crux of the heavyweight division right now, is that you can make $50 million or $40 million to be a max contract player in the NFL or the NBA, or you can come over to the UFC and go through the regional scene and then start your career in the UFC on a 10-10 or 12-12 contract. So while this is the most pitiful state that we've ever seen the UFC heavyweight division, I don't think that it's quite time to panic. I think that this is just a lull in the division. And I think 155, that's had its moment for years now, could have a lull at one point as well. What should the UFC do about the heavyweight division? Should they let them juice? Should they start moving people up from light heavyweight? Should they introduce a cruiserweight division at like 230 or 235 to, I don't know, bring some people up in weight? I don't really know, but I want to hear from you guys down in the comments down below. What is the solution to the atrocious state of the UFC heavyweight division? Do you want more from Fight Society? Like and subscribe below this video and click the join button to become a channel member today to get access to behind the scenes vlogs and members only live streams.